have my little buddy here today because it is how many days from Christmas? I don't know, but it's coming up really soon. Hello, my name is Victoria. What's his name? Tinsel. This is Tinsel, and I'm a recent graduate. I was studying English and publishing in university, and I'm currently on the job hunt. And in the meantime, I have been taking this as an opportunity to start my channel, to make content about post-grad life, as well as doing some more just like lifestyle vlogs, experience type of videos. So if you do enjoy stuff like this, please stick around. I'd love to have you on this journey. Also, I love photography and roller skating. If you're here, you're probably wondering what I have to say about time management, about self-care, about work, life, study, balance. I feel like this is just thrown around a lot, especially if you are a student. It's mentioned so much, but I feel like actually learning how to manage one's time, how to figure out how much time you want to dedicate to your hobbies, to your social life. All this stuff is not simply really talked about, or you're never really taught strategies unless you seek them out. And it was something that I struggled with, and I still do. I think we always will have a level of challenge because our lives are continually changing, especially when you're a student. I think is something you almost get used to because every semester you likely have a new schedule unless you're in a really strict program. But in my case, when I was studying, it was very much like you are taking a variety of different subjects and your schedule can look different every semester, or would look different every semester, versus maybe somewhere where they'll have more of a strict sort of schedule. It comes with so many opportunities to really get involved in different areas, to really follow your different passions, whether that's on campus or off of campus. And it also allows for some flexibility in terms of myself. I would say I'm not much of a morning person. I prefer to wake up a little bit later, stay up a little bit later. I'm a bit of a night owl. So I really appreciate that when you have more flexibility in your schedule, you can actually find ways to make it work better for you. And something I realized compared to high school was I could really optimize my schedule to just be able to feel well rested and get enough sleep. And I didn't necessarily have to be in the classroom at 8 a.m. though there were semesters where that was just the time of a class I wanted to take, so you're limited at some points. However, what I'm saying is there are some opportunities to really learn and make your schedule work for you, but at the same time, self-discipline is so important because there isn't anyone there who's going to check that you are at class. You have so much more freedom. So self-discipline is more important than ever because people aren't going to chase you in university. You have to show up for yourself and also really take that effort to build a sense of like community and a sense of support, because I think otherwise it can become very isolating and overwhelming. At the end of my degree, I feel like I finally, in a way, was getting into the flow of things, kind of understanding what works for me when it comes to scheduling, when it comes to discipline, and also kind of realizing what were my triggers for procrastination and for really falling into overwhelm and anxious thought loops that at the time didn't necessarily seem to be so much of a problem. I used to think even if I'm leaving this thing to the last minute, I'm gonna get it done. I would oftentimes do well on these assignments that I would be cramming, And I think part of it was that pressure. I needed that pressure to make me really start working. And I used to think, oh, I do my best work under pressure, like the diamonds type of thing. But no, I realized I don't need that pressure. I just need a little bit of discipline. I just need a little bit of guidance from myself to be able to feel like I'm on top of things and not be like I'm doing these assignments and work out of fear, out of stress, but rather because I am motivated, I have an interest in my subject and my degree, and I want to feel like I'm on top of my schedule. I want to feel like I have a balance and my life isn't just stressing about school. Period. Final year of my degree, I was like, you know what? I don't want to have even any late nights where I have to push through because I have a deadline. I want to be finishing stuff ahead of the deadline, waiting till midnight to submit something. I want to actually have something submitted and have a nice chill evening to myself. And I don't want to be at this point where I'm so tired and I really need a break, but I'm having to push through because otherwise this is going to be late or whatever. So that was my challenge for myself in these past 2 semesters was, can I get out of that cycle? Can I get things in a little bit earlier and just eliminate that stress from my life? Because I realized there's unnecessary stress on me, and I could still be doing like a good job at my schoolwork, and I didn't need that additional pressure. So anyway, I'm going to talk about just my tips and my advice, things that have worked for me, and I hope that this is helpful to you wherever you are at in your education journey, like skills I developed also through working during my undergrad. And I think you can apply 100% these types of project management skills and organizational skills to your work life as well. So it doesn't necessarily need to be academic, but one realization I had during my degree was that procrastination often came from a sense of overwhelm and anxiety and perfectionism, all of that. And that was a huge issue for me, where I was just giving myself super high expectations. I wanted to do well. And of course, you need that drive. You need a sense of caring about your work and wanting to put in 110%. It's great. But I realized that you put so much pressure on yourself, it just ends up harming you in the end. It just ends up ultimately making it so much more stressful, to the point where I can't start something because I can't stop thinking about the end result, or this seems really hard, or I don't know what to do right now. And then I realized it just made everything harder, because then maybe I would be ignoring something. I would be like, I don't want to think about this essay coming up. Well, it's due in 3 days, so I need to do something. And then that anxiety would take over and force me to do the work. Being motivated by fear and just not even being excited, being just stressed out. I feel like it's great to be concerned about school, but you have to have your balance of why are you doing this at the end of the day, and recognizing like that a lot of times your anxiety is lying to you. Sometimes I think like, oh, if I get a bad grade in this, it's all over. A lot of times if you do bad on an assignment, there are opportunities to get help, to try again, and even retake a course if it gets that bad. There's always gonna be another option, and it's often not the worst thing ever. So for me, dealing with the perfectionism, dealing with that had to be a mindset shift. Just being open to the fact that I might fail, and that's not the end of the world. I can get up and I can try again. Especially when it's something though like writing. I don't think you can really ever fail at writing per se. It's more of a practice, something that I realized asking for help, ask for guidance if you feel stuck. There is so much that you can do. You don't have to be on your own. And that has been a great tip for myself as well. If you have a library, maybe even in your community or specifically at your school, they often do offer peer support, peer editors, or even there's a writing commons at my school where there's staff specifically trained in this and offering feedback that can read drafts of your work. And so now let's talk my pillars of avoiding procrastination, because I mentioned a little bit about how I think my procrastination was fueled by perfectionism and also just anxiety, which a lot of times came from a sense of overwhelm of being I have so many things to do and I don't know what to focus on first, and my brain was just shutting down. So number one, regular schedule is so important, and think of this as setting up whatever phase of life you're in. So for me, I would do this every semester where I'm looking at what time are my classes at, what are my commitments basically for this next phase of my life. So often for me it was a semester schedule because it was 4 months, new schedule every time. So looking at that and setting yourself for success from the start, I think is so important, because at this point is when you can identify the gaps in your schedule and also be realistic. If you are taking on too many commitments, you'll be able to see that when you are time blocking. I think what's really important is to look at what are the recommended study hours. For example, for the course you're doing, they might say you should be doing 3 to 6 hours of coursework a week on top of your course time. This is just an example. Look at whatever specific courses you are doing. But looking at that and being let's put that in, let's time block that in to this hypothetical schedule. And do I have time then for these other things that I want to do? Because when it comes to schedule, this is your life schedule. It is not just your school schedule, not just your work schedule. Put that big commitments first. But then you have to really be honest with yourself about your energy. And even though I said I'm a night owl, I used to then be I do my best work at night. And I realized I didn't want to have late nights, because when I had a late night, it just became a cycle of me then sleeping in and then waking up later and then doing it again. And I realized if I just get up earlier, study earlier, finish earlier, maybe I can have more of a chill, nice evening, not worrying about studying, not being up till midnight. Wouldn't that be nice for me if I had a chill evening where I was setting out my lunch for the next day, setting out my clothes for the next day? I realized that night routine is so integral to how my day goes, and that includes getting a full 8 hours plus of sleep for me. So I wanted to make that a challenge for myself. But basically in my schedule, I tried to give myself a day schedule. So I was I'm gonna go to class in the day and then study till about 6 p.m. Then I go home, have dinner, then hopefully I can try to focus my school work to be done by 6 p.m. But when I'm busier, having maybe a few more hours after dinner, after I've got a little bit of fuel and I've had a break, I could go till 8 p.m. So if I had those midnight deadlines, I was 10 p.m. done, versus being I have till 12 and then spending my evening working on things. And then also being someone who's indecisive, I often would just fill up that time and be well, I have till midnight, so let me just keep working. There's a theory of you have time, you'll make that task fill up that time that you have. So when I had those midnight deadlines, I realized in so many cases I would procrastinate and then oh my gosh, at 10 p.m. get super productive because I have 2 hours left. And I realized that was fueling that anxiety. So for me, that's why having a focus time, being like, by 10, let's call it quits. Let's call it quits. Let's submit it. If it is a case where I was just needing more time, then I asked for an extension. It reduces your decision fatigue so much. I've realized that like having a focused time for work really allows you to experience like that on and off time and almost have like more of a work-life balance, because I feel like with student life it can be like you feel like you're on all the time. And so I really wanted to create that feeling of being off and being on when it came to my work, because I realized I needed that for my focus. I simply couldn't worry about my assignments 24/7, right? School is a big part of my life, but it is not your entire life. So you need those boundaries. But for myself, I also was like, I want to have weekends off of studying, so I'm focused on it during the week. I think if you struggle with focus, it just makes sense. At least I would know if I'm supposed to be studying and I'm not, and I'm like, well, how can I redirect my attention right now? You already know where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to be doing at certain times. Even in those times where I was really struggling with, I don't know what to do with this assignment, seems like a really difficult assignment and I feel overwhelmed to start. Just the fact that I was like, I only need to focus for an hour right now and then I can take a break, or 2 hours on this. It just makes it more doable. And sometimes 1 hour, 2 hours sounds crazy. And you might be like, I can only focus for 10 minutes right now. Do it. Literally put on that timer and focus for 20 minutes. And then usually you'll find yourself going somewhere. Maybe there's something going on in your life right now that is really taking up a lot of space, and be like, I just need to write for a little bit, get this thing off my mind, put it away for later. And other times it'd be like, this is a super big thing or a super stressful thing happening in my life. But maybe I can put it on hold and focus, give myself a break from it. For me, like doing a little check-in at the start of my study sessions or brain dumping is such a great tool, because it allows me to be like, what is on my mind right now? Let me write it down. I then am able to give my mind a break. It's not trying to remember all these things fishing around my mind. Something I do pretty much every day now, because I always have a million things on my mind. And who doesn't in this time? So that is a big tip. A big part, I think, of focus is also just the space you're in and getting into the habit of hacking your brain. You're making it easier for yourself to have the focus. And I think for me, I've realized that a lot of procrastinating came from the fact that I would not give myself breaks, or I would feel overwhelmed again, as I mentioned. But giving yourself a break, being like, your brain knows that it just needs to focus for this hour, and then you get a break. And then you can think about whatever else was on your mind. That is just so integral to my focus, I've realized. Unjaded Jade, who's one of my favorite YouTubers, had a piece about this in one of her videos, just being like the sanctity of your space and just how important that is as well. So being like, of course, if you, like me, looking at my very cluttered desk, I'm not going to want to study if I have a very cluttered desk. I think this is why also just having, again, continuous study spots during the week, kind of identifying where you're going to study is so big. I don't know how much time I wasted trying to find different study spots. Oh my gosh, it just makes it so much easier. And if you're a new student or something, like, I think that is so important, like maybe first week and stuff, to go and scout out those spots. Now, when it comes to time blocking, I think that you also need to recognize that life happens, and that sometimes it might just be like, something came up, I had an appointment, maybe an assignment is just taking a lot longer than you expected. So flexibility is, of course, integral to that. And I think something that can help is already having a flex time, some time blocked in your schedule. You can see week to week what you might need to use that specific study time for. If you are doing this thing where if you use time blocked at the start and then you are every week looking at what are my assignments, what do I have coming up, putting that in your calendar, you'll be able to identify when do I need more time. You might start off well in the semester, but then you get mid-semester point, shit has happened and you're a little bit behind on one assignment, then affects it's like a domino effect, right? You might just be at a point where you're like, I could really use an extension. I would say reach out as soon as possible, and I think that's why looking ahead really helps, so you can identify when you're gonna be like, oh, this is gonna be a crunch. And you can ask, because I find instructors are generally more open to offering extensions if you don't ask them super last minute, unless of course there's like extreme emergency. But generally, I think they're more happy if you ask a few days in advance so that they can also plan. That's the biggest thing. I used to be really terrified, and I still was nervous to ask for extensions, but I was like, literally, guys, worst thing they can say is no, and then potentially you might lose some. Sometimes they'll like take off a certain percentage for late assignments, so I think that's something to check out too, so you can prioritize. Like if one class takes a big chunk out for late assignments, or they're really unforgiving with that, then you can prioritize maybe this other class. Not having shame around that. Realize that even if it's just an extra day would help me so much, because it would be the difference of me staying up late and give my brain a rest, and I can look at this and edit it more in the morning. And oh my gosh, I feel like just my quality of work goes up so much too when I give myself that, my brain, a break. Definitely, I realize I don't do my best work under pressure. Like, a little bit of pressure for sure, but like not so much that I'm like there, I'm not even sure what I'm writing anymore. I feel like that's the worst feeling, when you're just like, oh my god, I'm at the point where I don't even know what this says because my brain cells are gone to sleep. Now, how do you know that you're on track though? I know I've heard this from people where it's just like, well, I don't know, I'm just gonna have to see, like I'm just gonna see the assignment goes. And while partly that's true, you also need to have an estimate. And you need an estimate to be able to inform you of if you are maybe spending too much time on something, or if you need more time. The biggest thing that I have done to like help me when I have big assignments, when it's like you have this one deadline, but you've actually realized like an essay is like several little things in one. You have multiple drafts, maybe you have proofreading, you have research components. It's actually integral to not even just look at your final deadline. What are the little deadlines that are going to help you get to that final deadline? So one tool that really helped me was an assignment calculator, where you put in your final deadline, but it would actually then be like, what day is it today? When's your deadline? And then it would break it up to you. It'd be like, by tomorrow, have your topic. By the next day, have your sources. It would break it up in that way. And it just allowed me to be so much more realistic than being like, I can write an entire research essay in 24 hours. Have fun. No, I don't want it. For me, I really liked having a buffer time and building that buffer time into my schedule. So being like, I am going to schedule this essay to be done 2 days before actual deadline, but I would put that in my calendar as the deadline. Submit it by this day. And so if anything, I would submit it early. But when you have multiple things due in a week, sometimes you need those fake deadlines will become your real deadlines, because I don't know about you, it depends on how you like to work. But for myself, I really struggled with working on multiple big things at once. I would do it, But I found like I genuinely would enjoy just really focusing on one thing, finishing it, then really focusing on the next. Again, having those time blocks, being like a different subject maybe each day. So it's still like have a little bit going of each project. One thing that I also really liked from Jade's video is she's talking about the mandatory minimum. What is your mandatory minimum for each of your subjects every week? Because you've likely done these assignments before, done an essay. How long does each of these tasks roughly like take you to do? Basically just being realistic and being able to like not worry, because this reading takes me about 2 hours. So I have this 2-hour block. I'll get that reading done. And you're able to know what you need to do to move forward. And you can kind of rest easy, because if I have this in my schedule for the week, I know I can do this and I'll be good for my course. It will help me focus in the moment on whatever I'm doing, because I know that I'm set. Again, it might just take a little bit of time to like do these assignments and get an estimate of how long they usually take you. But I think you can often guess it based on previous work. One of my favorite books I read, which it's called Writing with Power, and I read this in grade 12 actually. It just changed my mind, as in understanding that the writing process is completely separate from the editing process. When you're writing, it's all about your creativity and your ideas and letting that flow uninterruptedly. And editing is all about finding maybe the structure and things and fine-tuning and polishing your word choice. And it is a critical process, and you can't bring that editing process into your brainstorming, into you starting. That is gonna completely hinder you, right? So just recognizing that these are completely different processes, and you need time to switch your brain from that. I used to always struggle with starting papers or starting assignments, but I realized I was being critical. I was trying to edit from the start. I was trying to edit before I even put words down. And this just completely made sense to me when I heard it. And I was like, oh, that's why I never write anything, because I'm just being critical from the start, and I need to actually let my ideas just go. Number 2 for avoiding procrastination, I would say, is motivation and connecting to your personal reason for what you're studying, why you are showing up, why are you doing this. It like allows you to look at the bigger picture. I think just like connecting to your motivation is super important. You can write it down, have a little paper at the start of your notebook or whatever. This is why I'm doing this, and it's personal, it's very unique to you. For me, it's just like, oh, I am genuinely interested in learning. And I think just connecting to that passion for learning also allowed me to step back from my stress and obsession with doing well and getting good grades, because I realized it's not about that. It's really about my personal learning. And I was like, if I'm worrying so much about getting straight A's or this or that, I'm not really focusing on my learning. I am not challenging myself. That is not a good learning environment. So I think if you are invested in your learning, you will do well, because you will ask for help if there's times that you're struggling. You will not be ashamed to say, like, I need help with this, because like, there's no shame in that. But I definitely would struggle with going to my TA and be like, I don't know what's going on. These are just my little affirmations that I did, but please feel free to come up with your own and find what your reason is. The thing that I think got me through the more challenging parts and assignments was just often I would get to this place of, I don't even know what to do for this. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I was like, how many times have I felt like this before? Oh, so many times I feel like this. And guess what? I figured out what to do. I pushed through and I did something. I always showed up and I always did something, even when I felt uncertain. You know what? Something about that isn't so daunting anymore, because I realized so many times I felt stuck before and I figured it out. I don't know what I'm doing, but guess what? that doesn't have to be so scary. That doesn't have to feel so limiting, because it can be an opportunity. And I try to like view it that way instead of feeling like wanting to feel shut down. I figured it out before, so I will do it again. Scheduling in time to ask questions. Professors and stuff are also willing to like look at drafts. If there's anything that's going to give you confidence in your work, is to like have some sort of direction or comments from someone who's going to literally be like marking your work. So yeah, that was just something where a lot of times I feel like I didn't take advantage before, because I wouldn't like leave time for it. But I realized it would actually speed up my process so much. I would not sit around being indecisive, because I could actually just have my questions answered. Like, make the independent work, the time you're working on your own, go so much smoother. One of my favorite YouTubers had told me, was just mentioning in one of her latest videos, that self-discipline really is accepting that something might feel boring in the moment, but future you will be grateful. And it's delayed gratification. It's just knowing that this is still good for you, but it's something that future you is going to thank you for. So for me, a big one was going to sleep earlier and just being like, future me in the morning, I'll be so thankful to wake up and actually feel well rested, not start off my day in a stress. Your lifestyle and well-being is everything. I was just reflecting on how the images we see of like a hardworking student is someone who's like on their third coffee or Red Bull and eating an all-nighter in the library. And is that our view of success, or why has that become the norm of this means that you're doing the most in school, and if you're not doing the most, you're not doing enough? Like, why is that our norm? When I'm not fueled with actual healthy foods, when I haven't gotten a good rest, I am not doing my best work. Like, just a fact. It's just like, I'm not awake. I'm like, what is going on? When it comes to scheduling, are you scheduling time for rest and recuperation? I think the biggest change that I came into was one alumni speaker. She said, I realized it's energy management over time management. It's not about how much time you have. It's about how much energy you have, because you can have the time, but if you don't have the energy, you're not going to do it. And like, I was just like, oh, that's so true. I realized like much of my procrastination came out of the fact that I wasn't giving myself breaks. I did not have intentional breaks and rest scheduled in there, so my brain took it for me. Personal life things can get very stressful. It needs time where I'm not thinking. I can do mindless things too, right? So having that in your schedule, so important. Making sure you have time to meal prep. I think meal prep is fantastic. If you are a student, maybe living on your own for the first time, you can make a nutritious meal, and then it will last you a few days throughout the week. Only when you're gonna go grocery shopping, all those things I think just need to be in your schedule, and they don't need to take up a lot of time, but the good that you're gonna get out of it, like eating nutritiously, you're gonna be fueled, you're gonna have the energy to show up at your 8 a.m. lectures. So the recognition, like, we are not meant to be sitting on our asses 24/7. Like, bodies are meant to move. We need the blood flowing. Like, complete a workout, and I'll notice I'm like sitting so still right now, because like body has moved and it's got all my sillies out. The people you surround yourself with, your support system, and maybe having like their study buddies is super integral as well. Also, people who are going to understand and respect the boundaries that you're setting. And one thing I realized, like, having breaks and like even just like solo time during those breaks is so necessary for me as someone who gets really easily overstimulated. Even if it's like social or fun, sometimes like my brain is still processing like what I learned in class. Oh, maybe I don't need to go do something social right now, or I'd like to, but my brain actually just needs some peace and quiet right now. Really, it was just like people that I became friends with from just sitting next to each other in class, and like we started chatting, and then we studied together. And literally just like have someone like mirror me when it comes to work is also super important. Again, could be an additional distraction. I think if you communicate about like take a break at this time, it can help you. So find those things that work for you. I was also inspired by one of my classmates who was like really working ahead, but she was like, I'm inspired by like my friend who does things way early in advance. It's like, I failed if I am, up late trying to submit something really last minute. If I have to like do that, I've failed myself. And I was like, wow, because I was like, I never thought about that. I was just like, woo, I get like a like dopamine rush of being like, woo, I just submitted that at like 11:54. It was me. Like, I was addicted to like the challenge. It's just a different perception change to be like, wow, this doesn't have to be the way it is. Like, you can actually be pretty healthy and chill and be doing well in your studies, and you don't have to be stressed out to be like, I'm doing hard work and I'm doing my best. I think in the end, I just wanted to say some reminders of it's such a process, and also life happens, which means that like you can even be going through like serious health things or like loss of loved ones during your semester. And I think reaching out and looking for what are accommodations to help you through those moments. If you're already suffering, like there are things that are built into academic system to really help you during those times, and reach out and don't isolate yourself during those times either. In terms of resources, some things that I thought of are your school's library in terms of workshops and videos that they have maybe around the topics of procrastination and time management. I've been seeing more things about like procrastination is not laziness, and I'm just like for it because I'd love to like more about the cognitive science behind it. I think I've just felt like it got dismissed like that so much like growing up, and like let's talk about it, let's share strategies for people instead of shaming them. But yeah, I think being compassionate with yourself, a little bit of something is always better than nothing. It is something like bad grade. A lot of times these things aren't gonna really affect you in the long run. So just kind of like anchoring yourself in times of worry and strife, I think is super important. Okay. Dude, why do I yap so much? Oh my gosh. Having those things that you're really looking forward to, whether it is a little hangout with friends or you're gonna like or play a cool video game on the weekends. I kind of felt stuck or being like, I really just miss my partner right now. I'd be like, let me focus on this right now so that like when I see him in 2 days, I can be like, I'm present with you at this time, and I'm not worrying about my schoolwork because I got my schoolwork done. So I can be present with you in this moment. And like the past year, I learned about cycle thinking and how women's menstrual cycles, or if you're just a person who menstruates, our hormones are different every freaking day of the cycle, which means our energy levels are different every day of the cycle as well, compared to men's that have the same every day, 24 hours. Nothing changing there, which means no, your energy is not the same every day. And it's just like when you understand that, I don't know, energy management just becomes like much more like, yeah, I'm not gonna perform the same every day, and I'm not gonna feel the same every day. And I think it's just important to like get with yourself every day, because like sinking aside, like gonna be different things in your life happening to you that are gonna take more energy. So again, having that flexibility and compassion for yourself, I think, is super important. Yeah, thank you. So yes, I hope you have a wonderful day or night, whenever, or midday, I don't know, whenever you're watching this. I hope it was helpful. Tell me like if you've been working on any of these tips, or if you have any tips that I haven't mentioned. I'm sure there are lots. I'd love to hear them. So yeah,